Hello YouTube, and this is going to be a review of the HOMERS TEVO Odysseus printer. I know this is just basically a rebranding of the TEVO Tarantula, but it's still a good printer. Sorry for the camera angle there, but let's get into this. So, the first thing that's most important about this printer is the extruder itself. We have a volcano hot end, which means we're going to have a lot of very quick melting of the plastic. I know that's a weird way to phrase that, but it's just how I speak. And it's a good printer. We can go in here and we have a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. I know it's kind of hard to see in the dark. Not too well of lighting in here, but it definitely gets you some pretty good fine detail on your prints if you want to see here. I know the camera's not too focused. Let's put that down. Gosh, that is hard to see. But in the glare there, you can see that that's some pretty good print. The holes come out nice. It's smooth. You know, you have some small granules, but very little artifacting, almost no over extrusion. It's a very good printer. Just using the standard V-slot and roller combination here, which a lot of printers do use. And when compared to like the Ender 3 Pro, it still has a dual width piece here, as opposed. Well, I guess the Pro does have that, but the standard Ender 3 does not. And I do like this front plate. It definitely helps. It comes with a touch screen that does work. I had trouble with mine drooping a little, but I really don't think that that's going to be too big of an issue. However, one thing that I would say that is definitely an issue is that I ordered the standard HOMERS ODYSSEUS, not the TS, I think it is. However, I still got 2 rear lead screws, and I think that that was mostly an error. If it isn't, then I would definitely recommend it at $230. It was a great quality printer, magnetic build plate, which makes separating your your 3D prints off of the build plate exceedingly easy. However, I did have trouble with the printer wanting to like push itself into the bed, and it melted itself there into the bed there, which led to kind of a catch. It's not terribly bad, but not great either. I would also not recommend, if you do buy this printer, printing the default spool holder. I have it here printed in the same black PLA that I have here. The default settings that they used on their slicer were way too hot. In fact, it actually left a permanent burn mark in the build plate. I know it's a little hard to see, but that's part of what this grayness is here. And that's another thing that this build plate seems to have an issue with. Really thin stuff. So this is a failed print that I had. They don't come off. Like, you have to scrape them off with a knife, but it's not a hard material. You know, it's very flexible, so that it just gives away. Yeah, so I would say that this is good unless you're having a lot of trouble like tuning in a filament or something, and there's no alternative because all you have is the magnetic plate underneath. I would recommend putting maybe some tape down before you actually start really getting into your printing, and just level it with the tape, so that way you don't damage the build plate. Or maybe even some like saran wrap or something. Now, it does warm up really effectively and fast, which is awesome. Actually, it hits temperatures in under a couple minutes, and it's a lot faster than some other printers that I've used. Yeah, I did try to install this BL Touch. I bought it for like $10. I did not get it off the original HOMERS TEVO site, and I had issues with the mounting brackets. So on the top here, there are 2 mounting holes on this steel bracket that holds the extruder, and that bracket is too far away from the end of the hot end due to the volcano, and this was too short to actually reach even with the longest screws. So I had to print an adapter that would essentially allow me to parse out the BL Touch. Up next is the extruder. I do have issues with that as well. Occasionally, prints will, like my PLA likes to snap when it gets old. It sits for a while and it'll snap. And what'll happen is, due to the fact that it's a Bowden extruder, as your filament comes in, and you want to say try and feed more in to push it through, it'll get stuck. And ripping into it takes a long, long time. It's not very fun, especially in my cramped location here. I really do wish that was a little easier to take apart, because the stepper motor is actually attached to it. So the only way to open it is by taking the stepper motor off, which for some reason this printer has issues with, because it has some sort of capacitive sensory in it, in that when you do that, it does not want to run that motor for a while, and you have to turn it off and let it sit for a few minutes. And then it comes back on. The other thing is, Cura does not like this printer at all. I had a lot of issues with the printer and Cura not meshing well. If you want to use a different one, it might be okay, but Cura doesn't like this. The side, and these are mostly my critical opinions, the side mount for the limit switches here, and really most of all the mounts except for this one here, are very flimsy. They just kind of move around. There's only one screw holding them in, which means that if your printer has an error, or say a cable gets caught in it, it just ends up resulting in a failed print for one, and it also moves your printer, and you have to recalibrate everything, which is why I was trying to get the BL Touch set up. Moving on though, the structure of this, it was easy to put together. Even though the instructions weren't all that accurate, well, I guess they were accurate. They weren't all that. It's hard to explain. It's more like they definitely got me there, and they didn't get me there through a lot of pain. It was pretty easy, but it still felt off, which to some extent is okay. You know, I'm sure this comes out of China somewhere. But yeah, if you can get the exact printer that I got for the same price that I got it, which was around $230 US, I would definitely recommend it. It's a good bang for your buck. However, do keep in mind that if it's not around $230, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend getting an Ender 3. And a big part of that is there's no community for this printer. So if you want to modify it, you want to add a LCD or LEDs to the top, you can't do that unless you know what you're doing, because there is no community. There's nobody that's going to tell you, oh, just do this, or here's a 3D printed model that works. For instance, this limit switch here that I actually made myself so that I could do time lapses, I had to make that myself. There was nobody that I could go to and find a limit switch that would work for this printer. However, that wasn't really that hard to make. You know, it took me a couple tries and I had it done.